Week 12, NFL. 5 most important things hanging out watching football on a Sunday. Here's what we got. A Heisman moment for Trevor Lawrence. A 2-point conversion, a win against the Baltimore Ravens. Remember, since we said we liked Jacksonville when they were 2-1, they beat the LA Chargers. They went 1-6. Their defense is not good. It's not the worst, but it's 21st after this weekend. Offense is kind of good. Close to being a top 10 offense, depending on what numbers you want to look at. But this is Trevor Lawrence's best game of the season against the Baltimore defense that had kind of been feasting on bad offenses. Remember, we said we liked Baltimore here on the podcast. After 3-3, they went to 7-3. Now they're 7-4. Baltimore also had this absurd run of losing 10-point leads or more in the fourth quarter. So I just kind of felt like putting it all together and an easier schedule that Baltimore was going to go on some kind of run here, and they did. But Jacksonville got him here. And look, it's Trevor Lawrence's, I don't know if it's a breaking out moment. I don't know if it's a righting the ship moment for Jacksonville, because, again, I do respect Baltimore here. But let's go to those last two throws. They're trying to come back, going the length of the field. They almost screw it up on a turnover. But the last two throws, a 3rd and 6 to Zay Jones for 29 yards. And here's what I loved about it. Zay catches it with 31 seconds left. They run up. No spike, okay? In this spot, I hate the spike because you have no idea what's going to happen. The seconds that you're going to save aren't really saved in this moment. And I feel like the spike strategy should be more malleable anyway. So it snapped at 19 seconds. That throw to his right to Marvin Jones for the touchdown was an incredible throw. It looked like he knew immediately what he was doing, but considering the coverage and that he's throwing against the sideline of the end zone, that ball had to be perfect, and it had some real torque on it and everything else. Like, I loved that throw and catch. It's caught at like 14 or 15 seconds left. Of course, the home clock operator ran it down to like 12. They put time back on. So you're not really losing any time in that moment, because even if you spike it at 19 and then you're snapping it and then you run the play, you're losing whatever seconds are going to be there in the first place. And sometimes you have to spike it because it's a longer play and everybody's running up and there's guys that just aren't around. But I felt like, considering where the catch was and then where the touchdown catch was, it was perfect execution. And really what this comes down to as well is great communication with a guy like Doug Peterson, who knows the position, has coached in big moments, and everybody having a plan. And so that, I thought, was perfect execution. And then a little bit more Peterson on this as they're reviewing the touchdown catch. He sends out the kicking team to tie for the extra point. Then they run out the 2-point team there late. Zay Jones again. Is it something to build on for Jacksonville? I don't know. It felt like it. It felt like a big moment for Trevor Lawrence, who, we've had some times this season where you're going, oh, I thought they were going to take this step forward. But the offense is probably better than you realize, and I think that's a really good win against Baltimore. Can I add something that seems irrelevant, but I just love it? Every time Lamar Jackson talks, every time he's doing something, I just love it. I was lucky enough to interview him twice. He's still one of my favorite college players I've ever seen, just throwing on Louisville games because he just embarrassed everybody all the time. When Jacksonville's driving, I think after they threw the touchdown, waiting the extra point, which ultimately ended up being the 2-point conversion, they show Lamar on the sideline laughing and kind of smiling. And there's times where I'll see guys after a brutal loss with way too big of a smile on their face at midfield, yucking it up with a guy they played in college with. I'm like, man, you're really okay with this. But as what I always kind of remind people, like, once you're in it, like, they process losses much better than you do in your jersey on the couch. Okay. A lot of them do. And I don't even know that's a negative. But in this moment, I felt like with Lamar, he's just looking around being like, hey, this is fun. And I'm having fun out here. And then, hell, when Tucker lines up that kick, I think all of us would admit it for a small moment. We're like, is he going to bang this from 67 yards and Baltimore's going to pull this one out? The other thing I like with Lamar, too, is when he wipes out somebody on the sidelines, he actually cares how they're doing after he crushes them. The other guy I noticed that with was Stephon Diggs. Does it mean anything? Probably not. I just like it. Number 2, Cincinnati, a game that could go either way in their win against Tennessee. Tannehill's clearly still hurt. On the other side for Cincinnati, Jamar Chase is out of this game as well. Mixon's out, but P. Ryan's been pretty good. Burrow was only sacked one time We remember watching Burrow going against the Titans in the playoffs. Revenge, clearly, I don't care what Tennessee said. You're the 1 seed. You lose at home to Cincinnati, goes on to the Super Bowl. You got to be thinking about that all week long. I know Jeffrey Simmons has become one of my favorite players in the NFL this season. He might be the angriest dude ever. Like, I think other grown men that are in the NFL are actually legitimately afraid of him, and they should be. So Burrow only is sacked one time after looking like he was going to make it out of that second quarter a year ago. An awful penalty on the field goal attempt that was going to put Cincinnati up a touchdown, but instead it allows them to run the clock. Shout out to Ian Eagle, who was on it immediately, immediately knew the clock math, was like, oh, the game's over. Game's over. Penalty for messing with the center lining up on the snap there. So Tennessee's still third in the AFC seeding. Cincinnati is 7th today, so obviously a huge win against that front and the revenge part that we've already addressed. Cincinnati has a brutal stretch their last 6 games. It's against 4 playoff teams and New England, who's technically an 8 seed today as of this morning. It's the 4th toughest remaining schedule. Tennessee is now averaging 5.6 points in the second half of games this season, which is the second worst in the NFL. Guess who's the worst? We'll get to them a little bit later. They're located in Colorado. Number 3, Chargers' best win of the season. Let's run through them. Who are their wins against? Las Vegas, the Texans, the Browns. That was a close one. The Broncos, close one. Falcons, close one. Man, all their wins are pretty close here. They haven't blown out anybody. You're telling me, okay, hey, Russillo, seriously? The Cardinals, that's your best win? I don't know. It felt like it. Seems wrong, but I'm going with it. Arizona's first game with Hopkins and Brown in the lineup this season. Arizona takes a 24-17 lead to start the fourth quarter. On Arizona's last punt, Kyler took a sack to make it 3rd and 16. That put the ball at the Arizona 4-yard line. The punt return set up the Chargers at the Arizona 38. You kind of just watch this going, yep. I think it felt like maybe Arizona will have some nice moment and then we can all watch it on Amazon together. Nope. Right down the field, touchdown. And then the 2-point conversion, staying with the theme of Sunday, aggressiveness. I do love how all the commentators after it works. It's like, I love it. I love it. Do you? I had no problem, especially Jacksonville. Like, who cares? The Chargers, I felt like, would probably win that game if they tied it up. I don't know. The 2-point play has to be maddening if you're in the film room for Arizona's defense on that one. Everett, number 7, the tight end for the Chargers, who I really like. They ran a bunch to the right side, and Simmons, number 9, the linebacker, sort of everything position guy. Remember him? He just got confused as hell. Like, watched the wrong stuff, stepped outside. Everett trails like the clear out route in very short amount of space. And Everett's just wide open. So Arizona, now 4-8 with the 8th toughest schedule remaining. The Chargers are now 4-2 in games trailing by double digits, which seems crazy. All right, number 4, the Matt Cain Run Support Award. Some of you were like, who? And some of you were like, wow. That goes to Derek Carr. I don't know what it is with Derek Carr lately. I'm just starting to feel for the guy. I'm sort of rooting for him. They win in Seattle in overtime. They were 2-7. Yay. They've won back-to-back games now at Denver, at Seattle. Not, you're going to get that excited about it, 4-7. Maybe it's because Derek Carr broke down recently and I felt bad for him. But then the reason I bring up the Matt Cain Run Support deal is that this is a team that's 28th on defense, which seems crazy with just one guy like Max Crosby, who was just had charges pressed against him yesterday. That's how violent he is. He's unbelievable. Carr's top 10 in QBR, which he did a couple years ago. We always knew kind of with Carr, like, hey, there's a lot of stats there that are pretty good, but what does it really mean? They don't seem to win enough. It seemed like Gruden wanted to replace him a lot. But if you look at the expected points added thing that Sando uses all the time, which is just a good way of going, okay, what does the quarterback do? And then what does the defense, what does the special teams do? The Raiders are at 28th in EPA, the combination of what defense and special teams are doing this season. Not good. Not good. But it gets worse. But wait, there's more. For his career, they tabulated this at the end of last season. For his career, for the 41 quarterbacks that qualified during that time, if you added up how good or bad the defense and special team support is, Carr was 41st 41 out of 41 that qualified. The worst supported. So that's why it's the Matt Cain rule. I'm not saying he's great. I'm not. But, okay, lastly, this week with Wilson. Here's a stat for you. Going into this week and their loss against Carolina on their third quarterback this season, if Denver had averaged, or let's say it this way, not average, scored 20 points in all of their games this season, which a 20-point per game average would be the 23rd best scoring offense in the NFL this season. So if they just were, again, average total points, we understand how math works here, but if they had just scored 20 points in all their games this season, which is something you probably thought was going to happen with Russell Wilson, they would have been 8-2 coming in. 20 wouldn't have got it done against the Panthers this week, though. I know that they had 3 wide receivers that were undrafted in uniform, left tackle, center on IR. There's a stat out there where they may have the most starters going to IR, which is some kind of hope, perhaps, that this Russell Wilson contract that's like almost $50 million a year, the extension, isn't going to be the worst deal in the NFL and historically one of the worst, because, again, I can't believe it. But Mike Purcell, defensive lineman, yelling at Russell Wilson on the sideline. I have no idea what happened there. I'm demanding, I need to know. I'm going to work really hard to try to figure out what was said. To Purcell's credit, after the game in front of the locker, he was awesome about it. He was like, look, I was just wanting to get them fired up. I just got a penalty. I was so mad at myself. We're all in this together. We didn't even get a stop, on and on and on. So I thought he handled it really well, credit to him. But the look on the faces in the moment just made me think like Wilson was kind of like, all right, cool. Nobody likes me because we're not scoring any points.